You're listening to Wise Women with Daisy Khan, where faith rolls up its sleeves as a force for good and where women define the future with wisdom and wonder. I'm Daisy Khan, author, speaker, and a Muslim woman who spent her life wrestling with a messy, miraculous collision of faith and real life. Every week, we explore eye-opening conversations with thinkers, doers, and trailblazers. And sometimes, it's just me and you. In this space, we will uncover truths, not to hurt, but to heal. Question norms and ideas, not people. Debunk myths about women and minorities that shrink their power. And we will do it with the quiet strength women have wielded for centuries. Whether you are seeking purpose in a noisy world, hungry for meaningful conversation, or longing to connect with your deeper self, or looking for ways to be an upstander, you belong here. So let's begin. And kindly subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Welcome, dear listeners, to the first episode of Wise Women with Daisy Khan. We begin on this auspicious day, which marks the end of Hajj, also one of the 5 sacred pillars of Islam. Every year, millions of Muslims journey to Mecca in a pilgrimage of devotion to God, humility, and rebirth. It's a journey required once in a lifetime of every Muslim who has the means and the wealth to undertake it. This sacred ritual culminates in Eid al-Adha, which is the festival of sacrifice, which honors the trials of Prophet Ibrahim, also known as Abraham, and his wife Hagar and their son Ishmael. This story isn't just Islamic scripture, it's a shared inheritance across faiths. Today, we will walk in their footsteps and discover how one woman's courage in the desert became the foundation of faith for billions. In this episode, we walk with Abraham, who's called in the Genesis as father of many nations, whose lineage through Isaac and Ishmael seeded Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. We also honor Hagar, the Egyptian noblewoman, history often sidelines, yet whom Muslims revere as the matriarch of Mecca. And we recognize Ishmael, like his father, was also appointed by God as a prophet, whose direct descendant is none other than Prophet Muhammad. We occasionally turn to Jewish and Christian texts, not to debate, but to deepen our understanding. But here in the desert where Kaaba now stands, humanity's oldest story finds its heartbeat. Imagine this. 4,000 years ago, Abraham is born in Babylon, which is current-day or modern-day Iraq. He's married to Sarah, but here's the thing. They can't have any children. They're too old. Now, God describes Abraham as a Hanif, which is this beautiful term meaning someone with a pure faith who doesn't really belong to any particular religious sect. He's just purely devoted to God. Then God instructs Abraham, gives him this incredible command: go, teach the oneness of the divine. So, because Abraham is so obedient to God, he leaves everything behind, his home, his land, and he journeys on with a few followers, along with his wife, far and wide. And now this is where it gets very interesting. Abraham ends up in Egypt, and the Pharaoh is so impressed by him and his wife that he gifts his princess from his court to them. Her name is Hagar, in Arabic Hajar. Some stories suggest that the Pharaoh was hoping she would influence Abraham to worship the Pharaoh's gods, but instead, Abraham welcomed her into the family, and you can already see God's plan starting to unfold. And this is where the different scriptures tell the story a bit differently. And it's fascinating to see how they complement each other. One account in Genesis describes Hagar as Sarah's servant, who's meant to bear Abraham a child. But there's another version where Sarah herself is struggling with childlessness and actually encourages Abraham to marry Hagar so they can finally have a family. Whatever the exact circumstances, Hagar finds herself in deep distress at some point. And that's when an amazing thing happens. An angel appears to her with this incredible message. God has heard your suffering. You will bear a son. Name him Ishmael, and his descendants will be beyond numbers. In other words, countless. Now that's the beautiful part, because Muslims believe this promise is actually foreshadowing the coming of Prophet Muhammad. It's this moment where you can see how all of these ancient stories connect to shape the future of faith. So when Abraham is 86 years old, his first son Ishmael is finally born. But the story doesn't end here. Years later, God makes Abraham another incredible promise that Sarah will also have a son too, and his name will be Isaac. God makes it crystal clear that both sons do matter. He says, my covenant with Isaac is eternal, but Ishmael, I will make of him too a great nation. So we're talking about two divine promises, not just one. But as you might expect, family tensions started brewing. Sarah gets worried that Ishmael might claim Isaac's inheritance, so she pushes Abraham to send Hagar and the boy away. Abraham is not convinced about this. In fact, he's very torn. After all, this is his son. But then God steps in, because God has a plan, and reassures him, trust me, Ishmael will be blessed and become a great nation unto himself. He will flourish. So Abraham does what God asks. He takes Hagar and Ishmael out into the desert. And you can imagine how heartbreaking that must have been for him. But they're wandering around under the scorching sun with no direction whatsoever. And some traditions say that in order to get somewhere, Angel Gabriel came down from the heavens to help them, guide them. And others talk about a holy wind that guided them through the thick and thin and led them to this barren valley in the middle of nowhere. Or at least that's what it seemed. But get this, that exact spot where they found refuge, that's where Abraham and Ishmael would later build a cubical structure sanctuary called the Kaaba. Now let's fast forward to today. That same Kaaba is Islam's holiest site today and the world's largest religious gathering site. We're talking about 25 million visitors a year, with 2.5 million pilgrims who literally walk in Abraham, Ishmael, and Hagar's footsteps during the Hajj. So that's where our story really begins, with sand, with sacrifice, and with the miraculous water that still flows to this day. So there they are, Hagar with her little baby or child, completely alone in the desolate valley with nothing but a small bag of dates and some water, as Abraham is walking away because he's been instructed to leave them. And he's disappearing beyond the dunes. Hagar gets nervous and she calls out to him because she wants to know why he's leaving. And she says, has your Lord commanded you to leave us here? And when he just emphatically says yes, her voice echoes across the empty sands. And then she says, then he will not abandon us. Now, can you imagine that level of faith and conviction? I'm always amazed by that. But then reality sets in. The dates are gone, the water is almost finished, and the little boy is writhing with thirst under the merciless sun. There are no tents, there's nothing. The only thing that they have for shade is a couple of trees. And as Ishmael starts fading, Hagar doesn't just sit there and weep. She begins to run. 7 times she sprints back and forth between 2 hills. One hill is called Safa and the other one's called Marwa, desperately seeking for water, for people, for any sign of hope. And her feet are getting scorched by the burning sun But her heart, there's absolute full conviction in her heart that she is not going to be left or be abandoned. And then just when despair is about to swallow the entire valley, something miraculous happens. Angel Gabriel comes forth with the tip of his wing, strikes the ground at the feet of Ishmael, and out comes gushing, pure, life-giving water from this barren land. This water today and then was called Zamzam, and get this, 4,000 years later, that same well is still pumping out 700,000 liters of blessed water every single day without ever drying out. Pilgrims from all over the world drink it for healing, for nourishment, just like Hagar did when she first discovered this miraculous spring that saved her son's life. Now, here's where the story gets even more amazing. Once the well becomes visible, birds start circling overhead. And that's always a sign to desert travelers that there's water below somewhere. So a tribe called the Jurhum tribe sees these birds and comes to investigate. They end up negotiating with Hagar so they could settle there. And that's how the town is born. And that town today is called Mecca. Ishmael grows up in this tribe. He learns Arabic from them. He marries into the community, and it starts a family line that would stretch through the generations, from his son Qadir to Adnan and to the Quraysh tribe, culminating in Prophet Muhammad himself. Now we come to the most interesting moment in Abraham's story. Both the Quran and the Bible tell us about his absolutely harrowing dream that he had, where God commands him to do the unthinkable, to sacrifice your son, your beloved flesh and blood. In Islamic tradition, the son is Ishmael, his firstborn. Can you imagine getting a command like that? The Quran tells us in chapter 37 that Satan himself tried to dissuade them all. He visited Abraham, then Hagar, and then even the young Ishmael, trying to plant doubt, trying to get them to disobey, but all three of them held firm in their faith. And when Abraham finally tells his son about this divine command, the young boy just replies, "Father, do as you are commanded." The trust, the submission is just breathtaking. So Abraham raises the knife, and at that exact moment when he's about to do the unthinkable, of course God intervenes. He replaces the boy with a ram. The sacrifice happens, but not the way anyone expected. In fact, the story doesn't even end there. Right after this incredible test, Abraham receives great news through a revelation. God tells him, "And we gave him good tidings of Isaac, a prophet from among the righteous." So Isaac, the son of the promise that Abraham was promised by God, is born after this ultimate test of faith, according to the Quran. Here we have two sons, two different destinies, one overarching truth that ties it all together. When you have absolute trust in God, what looks like sacrifice actually becomes deliverance. That's the lesson that echoes through both Islamic and biblical traditions, even to this day. Years later, Abraham returns to Mecca, and that's when God instructs him and Ishmael to build a sanctuary, a house for the worship of the one God. According to Islamic tradition, when Adam and Eve were cast out of the Garden of Eden, a celestial stone was sent down from the heavens to mark the place where they should build their first temple. As years passed, the altar and heavenly stone were lost during Noah's flood and completely forgotten by humanity. But God doesn't forget. This heavenly object that connects heaven to earth, along with the original location of Adam's altar, was revealed to Abraham by none other than Angel Gabriel, as Abraham was trying to figure out where to build his temple. So picture this: father and son are together, building a sacred cubicle structure for the worship of the one God, brick by brick, raising it as far as they could possibly go. It's nowhere near what today's Kaaba is like, but today's Kaaba is roughly still very modest, 35 feet by 50 feet high. Then God is telling Abraham, right after he's finished with his with the Kaaba, that he must establish pilgrimage. And it tells him, pilgrimage to the house of Kaaba is a duty owed to God by people who are able to undertake it. So this is where we have this instruction to go and do a pilgrimage. So Abraham's son, Ishmael, gets left in charge of the Kaaba as Abraham goes back home, basically becoming his caretaker and managing the Hajj properly. Well, before Islam was established in Mecca, and this is pre-Islam, the Arabs treated the place as sacred ground. They'd make annual pilgrimages regularly to honor Abraham's sacrifice as well as his sons. Now, however, over the centuries, the Arabs gradually became more polytheist. They moved away from monotheism and started using the Kaaba to worship and store their tribal deities. It is said that they had a deity for everything, so some 360 deities were around. Instead of pure monotheism that Abraham had established, they filled their sacred space, the Kaaba, with hundreds and thousands of statues and deities. Then around the year 605, a major fire took place, and it partially destroyed the Kaaba structure. And during the rebuilding work, they had to remove the black stone. And when it came time to put it back, well, that's where all the drama began. As you can imagine, every tribal leader of Mecca wanted to honor the setting of the black stone back in its rightful place because they understood its importance. And can you imagine the politics involved? These are proud tribal leaders, and nobody wants to back down. They were at a complete impasse, potentially headed towards a conflict, when somebody saw a 35-year-old man named Muhammad emerge just as they were trying to figure out how to solve this impasse. And now this is 5 years before this gentleman named Muhammad would become a prophet. So this was pre him being a prophet. He was a trader, a successful trader in Mecca, and came from a very good family. Everybody knew him. But he was already known to the Meccans for his righteous character. They all called him Al-Amin, which means the trustworthy one. So they brought the problem to him to see if he could solve it for them. And he came up with a brilliant solution. He asked the tribal leaders to bring him a large cloth. And then he put the black stone right in the center of it. And then he asked each clan member or each clan leader to grab a corner of the cloth. Together, they all carried the stone and set it in place. Genius, right? Every tribe gets to share in the honor, and nobody's pride gets hurt. Fast forward about 25 years. Prophet Muhammad has become a prophet at this point, and in 630 CE, he peacefully retakes Mecca. He returns from Medina and comes back to Mecca. And that's this beautiful moment. He rides around the Kaaba 7 times on his camel, touching the black stone with his staff as a gesture of deep reverence. In that moment, you can see Abraham's ancient prayer being fulfilled, his request to God to rise up a great prophet among Ishmael's descendants. As Islam was established in Mecca, Prophet Muhammad restored the Kaaba to its original purpose as a house of pure monotheism. The interior and exterior of the Kaaba were left completely empty and barren, and Hajj became one of the 5 pillars of Islam, connecting millions of believers back to Abraham, Hagar, and Ishmael. Today, within the sanctuary of Masjid al-Haram, which is the entire complex, stands the Kaaba, a structure so simple it literally stops hearts because of its purity. This striking cube of stone is encased in this intricately woven black cloth decorated with gold calligraphy, which has remained there for centuries. And originally, it didn't even have a cloth, but an African nation, I'm not sure which one, I'm sure I'll get an answer to it quickly, an African nation offered to, and since then, they have been painstakingly making this covering every single year. The covering is taken off. It's parts and pieces of it are shipped to dignitaries and special people around the world. And every year they remake this. And here's what makes the Kaaba so extraordinary. It is completely vacant inside, as an empty, hollow, a stark reminder that humans should bow to nothing except their creator. There are no statues, there is no earthly things to worship, just space, sacred space, intentional emptiness that points beyond itself to the infinite. Occasionally, people enter the Kaaba. You can see that the interior is very simple, clean, and people enter it to clean it and to perfume it. Embedded right into the eastern corner of the Kaaba is that precious black stone. Now I have to tell you a little bit about this stone because it's unlike anything else on this earth. When you're standing before it, if there's this overwhelming sense that you're in the presence of something truly otherworldly. I can vouch for that. I've stood in front of it. I've touched it. Pilgrims describe feeling a feeling of being drawn to it by some kind of a powerful energy, and it's hard to really put it in words, Many Muslims believe that the black stone has this amazing ability to absorb the sins of anyone who touches it, and that's why so many people want to touch it. So pilgrims will wait for hours just to touch it, to kiss it, because the Prophet said, go kiss it, believing that this sacred stone can literally lift the weight of their wrongdoings. To stand before the black stone is to stand at what many consider to be the threshold of heaven itself, a direct connection between our world and the divine realm that's been drawing believers for thousands of years. Pilgrims pass by an elegant gold and glass encased edifice, which is called the Station of Abraham. It's also right beside the Kaaba. It contains the stone which Abraham's actual footprints are on while he was building the Kaaba. It's pretty amazing when you see signs of Abraham there. And it's a reminder of the son and the father and the mother together helping build this town. So then we get to the Hajj itself, what actually happens at the Hajj. The Hajj begins with the Ihram, meaning literally a sacred crossing into purity. And this is when pilgrims from every corner of the world, they shed their worldly garments. Kings and street cleaners alike wrap themselves in two simple white cloths, mostly for men, which is like a toga. There's no designer label. There's no status symbol, just white, simple white cloth against human skin. And then they all cry out, "Here I am, O Lord, answering your call." And this is the same words that rang from Hagar's lips as she trusted God in the desert, the same surrender that poured from Abraham's heart. And in this uniform of humility, this humility that everyone is experiencing, prince and pauper and rich and poor, everybody is considered equal and not even distinguishable. So you don't even know who you're next to. And that's such a beautiful thing to see, that level of unity. Here, people from every corner of the earth stand in sisterhood and brotherhood, all connecting to the one God. Cultures, ethnicities blend into a sea of humanity, some glorifying God individually in whispered prayers, others collectively in unified chants. And 7 times they circle the Kaaba, clockwise, symbolizing the 7 heavens, like planets orbiting the sun, like moons circling planets, like stars dancing in the space. They become part of a larger cosmic order. all of creation is now orbiting God. And it is a preview of what the afterlife is going to be when all humans are, glorifying God, and the Kaaba is representative of God's throne, and we human beings represent all of humanity. And no one will be able to distinguish one from the other. And then, in this bustling flow of crowds, some pilgrims find themselves thrust directly at the sacred structure. They reach out to touch the black stone, that celestial fragment embedded in the eastern corner of the Kaaba. And that's when they feel that pull and that jolt, and the lucky ones are the ones that actually get close to it. The other rituals that take place in the Hajj is on the very first night. People spend a night in the what is called the City of White, because it's a sea of white tents where stretch the entire horizon under a canopy of desert stars. And here people are simply praying, doing their ritual prayers. Millions of souls are preparing for the trials that are ahead, because there are many other rituals that they have to undertake. So, but all the tents today are air conditioned, and they have all the modern conveniences, so it's not so inconvenient. And then the next thing that people do is they go to this Mount of Arafat, where kind of heaven touches the earth. At dawn, people move, again, the sea of humanity all in white, towards also this Arafat is called the Mount of Mercy. And this is not just any ordinary hill. This sacred ground is where Prophet Muhammad stood for his farewell sermon, where he declared words that shattered the foundation of prejudice. He said, no Arab is superior to a non-Arab, and no Arab is superior to a non-Arab. And it's a much, much longer sermon, and anybody can look it up, the last sermon. It's a beautiful sermon. And from noon until sunset, millions stand on this place with their hands uplifted in the air towards the heaven. Tears are mixed with ancient dust, and they whisper and they ask God in any language, in Arabic and Urdu and languages you've never heard. Oh Lord, forgive me, transform me, make me a better human being. And this event is the Hajj's, the beating heart of the Hajj, where a soul is being stripped completely bare before divine mercy. And this is the beautiful Mount of Mercy. Then, as darkness falls, sometimes extraordinary things happen. The pilgrims move to Muzdalifah, and here, under the vast desert sky, they sleep on the ground itself. No tents, no walls, just human beings and starlight. And this is where, if I'm there, I'm remembering Hagar's desert vigils centuries ago, what she must have seen, because anybody who goes to a desert, it's a beautiful place. The sand and the stars, it's such a magnificent scene. So yeah, it is something breathtaking. But these people are not just sleeping. They're actually doing something else. For the next rite, they are gathering 49 pebbles, small little stones, that they are collecting while they're making a vow. What are they going to do with the stone? With this stone, I'm going to get rid of anger. With this stone, I'm going to get rid of this vice I have. This stone, I'm not going to be envious. This stone, I'm going to get rid of all my fears. And they keep collecting these stones, until moonlight. And then, as they get ready, they have their ammunition against the darkness within themselves. So then they go to the war against evil. And this is called Rami. They have these 3 towering pillars. And the 3 towering pillars are because Abraham was tempted by Satan at 3 different points. And every time he was tempted, he threw a stone at the Satan, told him, be gone, get away from me, because he knew he was trying to dissuade him. And so now each pilgrim reenacts that. And people throw 7 stones, they fly at each of the pillars, And they always say God is greater. In other words, you, Satan, are not going to try and overcome me because God is greater than, God has more control over me than you. Basically, that's what they're proclaiming. Then whatever vice they have, I reject greed and they throw a stone, or, I shatter the doubts I have. I get rid of all the hatred I have. Whatever it is, it's not theater. This isn't even symbolism. This is literally spiritual surgery. Expunging bad traits from your heart and your soul, one stone at a time. It's beautiful. I think more of us should do that. I think it's a physical manifestation of literally reorienting your heart and your soul. And then our surrender deepens. And then there is a sacrifice. But this sacrifice is not about blood. It's about love. Remember Abraham, how he was about to sacrifice his son? This is a reenactment of that. And as Abraham was willing to give up his son, and then his son was replaced with a ram, each pilgrim then also offers a lamb, a goat, a camel, whatever he can offer. And he does that, or she does that. All of us adults have to do that. And then the meat feeds the hungry and the poor. And most people these days are, purchasing the lamb in some country which is very poor. I give I do my sacrifice in places like Afghanistan, where an entire village is taken care of for an entire week. So this is charity woven into obedience and love made manifest by helping those who don't have the means to take care of them. And then there are these final things that people do, which are symbolic. Men do shave their hair. They should shave it completely, but if they're not ready, they have to shave it somewhat. Women trim their hair, fingertip this much, not a lot. And so this is to in this moment, in the sacred moment, what you're doing is you're dying to your old self, and you are becoming somebody entirely new and purified, light, free from that. In this moment, you connect the present with the past, and this is where you feel that you're no longer trapped in the worldly trappings. So you're giving that up, at least momentarily, symbolically. And then we get to the point where we are now at the sacred sprint of the survival. Remember, Hagar running from one hillock to another before the final act. Pilgrims have to complete the sa'i, meaning striving. This is the striving that Hagar did. We reenact this, and it's a ritual. Between these two hills, they stretch a mile apart, and the pilgrims run back and forth 7 times. This is not a leisurely walk. They are rush. It's fast walking, speed walking. They push their bodies to honor one woman's desperate search for water. This is Hagar's story made flesh. When she was left alone in the desert with her son, she ran between these two hills, as has already been mentioned, scanning the horizon, looking for any hope of survival. So her rushing symbolizes humanity's eternal striving, because we're all striving for something. We're striving for perfection. We're striving to achieve something. We're striving to have a purpose in our life. And this is also, our way of surrendering, refusing to surrender to despair, that we can achieve something. So there's profound irony here. For me, some men on this pilgrimage who ardently reenact Hagar's fearlessness and her courage and conviction, and with every hurried step, they still consider women to be the weaker sex. Like, a woman is not capable of taking care of herself. She cannot defend herself. She cannot protect herself. She's not physically able to do anything. And some forbid their wives from walking too fast. I've seen it myself. They'll say, slow down, because they consider it to be immodest for a woman to fast walk. And I find that very ironic. But if we pause for a moment and we consider those who believe women incapable of making decisions, who insist women must always be accompanied by men, who think women have no role in shaping destiny, do they really contemplate who Hagar was and what she did and how she shaped our destiny? She shaped the destiny of billions of people, left behind with a child, completely alone, without a man to protect her. She shaped our destiny, and that's the truth. And that's the thing that we have to tell people and remind people. And I do a lot of work in Afghanistan, and when I hear that women are locked up because they're incapable or they are, they need the protection of men, I always wonder, have they read the story of Hagar? Did they read her story? Do they know this? Why has she been so obscured? And why did God choose a woman for this pivotal role? Abraham could have just been asked to stay with her. No, she was deliberately left alone. And what if she had not submitted to divine will? What if she had been afraid and said, "Don't leave me"? Would the town of Mecca have been established? Would it have flourished? Would Prophet Muhammad have revealed a revelation there? Would have even been born there? So I think it was a woman's belief, conviction, and self-sacrifice that stands behind Islam's holiest site. Those of us who are founders of things, we proudly call ourselves founders of an organization, a founder of this, and I founded this, I'm an entrepreneur. Well, she founded this town. Hagar founded Mecca. So when we speak of Hajj, and we speak of her, a woman whose faith turned desert into sanctuary, a woman, a seeker who's striving between Safa and Marwa, is reenacted by every pilgrim, man, woman, child, because Mecca's holiness began not with a king or a prophet, but the woman's love, her desperation, and her divine trust. This place is holy because it is where Abraham once stood with his son, where Hagar completed her desperate search, where Angel Gabriel first pronounced Prophet Muhammad as a prophet. There are so many significances to this one little town. And this is where Khadija, the tradeswoman, a successful tradeswoman, offered marriage to young Muhammad, who was not a prophet at that time. Where Bilal, an enslaved African, was freed by Prophet Muhammad to exemplify human equality, and then the Prophet asked him to stand on the very Kaaba that we've been talking about and said, "Go, call the prayer from the roof of the Kaaba." And this is where Fatima, the Prophet's daughter, and Ali, his son-in-law, grew up. They raised a family there and also endured deep hardships. This is where Aisha, the wife of the Prophet, spent years, spending all of her life after the Prophet's death, spreading the message of Prophet Muhammad. These spiritual ancestors have walked this very path. What unites all pilgrims across centuries is the same collective spiritual quest, the same hunger for the divine. We're all looking for the same thing. So when the call to prayer sounds, especially in the sanctuary is this whole area called the Haram, pilgrims take their rightful place in the full view of the Kaaba. Behind, beside, in front, people from every continent praying humbly to God, asking for God's favor. They come from all corners of the world, never imagining that God has boundaries that might prohibit them. Everybody in the Hajj is equal, has equal right to everything. It is one of the most beautiful things you've ever seen. Today, Hajj is a massive undertaking. 2.5 million people during Hajj season alone, with 25 million arriving annually for the pilgrimage and the Umrah combined. Saudi Arabia manages this unprecedented gathering with high-tech precision. They have crowd controls. They monitor people's movements from above. They have air-conditioned marble floors so your feet don't burn. They have well-lit sacred pathways everywhere. They have water everywhere and advanced water conservation projects that keep all the pilgrims hydrated, because it does get very hot there. Yet at the center of all this modern orchestration sits the simple cube that has anchored faith for over millennia. The Kaaba houses that celestial sacred stone in Islam's holiest site, while 2 billion Muslims around the world turn their exact gaze and their direction towards the Qibla, which is the Kaaba, during the 5-time daily prayers. So imagine the whole world is circling around the Kaaba when we are praying towards this Qibla. Finally, the pilgrims do drink Zamzam water. This is what the well actually looks like. Now it's preserved, it's covered, and people can visit it. That same water that saved Ishmael, and feels like 4,000-year-old promise. God never abandons those who trust him. And as they depart, the pilgrims pray that their prayers actually merge with Abraham's. Make us vessels of your peace. Let our return home be the beginning, not an end. So I hope you enjoyed this, my friends, my wise ones, my new listeners, my old friends. I hope this was enjoyable and educational for you. Some parting words to the men listening here. The pilgrimage asks you to remember Hagar, the Muslim men, the woman alone in the desert who shaped the destiny of billions. Every time you rush between Safa and Marwa, you're honoring her courage and her refusal to surrender. So, for the men in general, the women in your life, your daughters, sisters, wives, mothers, colleagues, they carry that same strength. They don't need your permission to exert their strength. True leadership is not about protecting women from their own capabilities. It's about creating space for their God-given strengths to flourish. To the women listening, Hagar didn't wait for rescue. She ran 7 times between the impossible hills with a child depending on her. And from her striving came the holiest site in Islam. So our takeaway is that our struggles aren't detours from our destiny. They're preparing us for it. And when you feel abandoned in your own desert, remember even God was watching Hagar run. And from her footsteps, he created a wellspring that still flows today. So let us not have our voices be diminished. Let us not shrink our dreams. The world needs what you are carrying. To everyone, the Hajj strips away everything we use to separate ourselves with. Wealth, status, nationality, race. And in those white clothes, only one thing matters: the content of your character and the sincerity of your heart. So, your final takeaway is every day is an opportunity to live like you've been wearing those white clothes. To treat the janitor the same respect as the CEO. To remember that everyone you meet is fighting a battle you may know nothing about. We're all pilgrims on this earth. We're all circling around something, hustling around something. Make sure it's something worthy of your precious and limited time. The journey ends where it begins, not with what you acquire, but what you become. So, go well, live purposefully, and remember your own pilgrimage is happening right now, in the life you're already living. Share this episode with anyone who needs it. Tag us at Wise Women with Daisy Khan. And let's find more stories about people who dare to dare big dreams for their girls. Until next time, keep climbing. I'm Daisy Khan, and this is Wise Women. And stay tuned for our next episode on Father's Day. My guest is a Saudi basketball club founder. She will share with you how her father supported her dreams and her talent, and you will be truly inspired by the insights she will share about the rapid developments that are taking place in the kingdom. I thank you very much, and stay blessed. Thank you for joining me on Wise Women. If something stirred in you today, Don't let it stop here. Share this episode with someone who needs it. Reflect on what resonated for you. And definitely plant one seed of change, however small. Remember, you do matter. And your actions have a ripple effect. But none of us can rise alone. To explore more resources and ways to get involved, do visit my website, daisycon.com. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review, because every click is your way of amplifying this message to others. Wisdom isn't just heard, my friends, it's lived. So let's live it. Until next time, stay wise and stay rooted.